There are people who walk into a room and something shifts. Conversations subtly reorient. Attention gravitates toward them, not because they demand it, but because something about their presence feels magnetic, almost effortless. You might have met someone like this and wondered what exactly makes them so compelling. Or maybe, without fully realizing it, you are that person. The truth is, charisma is often misunderstood. Many believe it belongs only to extroverts, performers, or leaders. But psychology tells a different story. Charisma is not about being loud or dominant. It is about how you make people feel when they are around you. Researchers studying social perception and interpersonal attraction have consistently found that charisma is rooted in two core dimensions: warmth and competence. When these two qualities are expressed naturally, without force, people perceive someone as trustworthy, engaging, and influential. A study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that individuals who display genuine interest in others while maintaining a sense of confidence are rated significantly higher in likability and influence. This is where natural charisma begins. It is not something you perform. It is something that emerges from how you relate to others. One of the clearest signs that you have a naturally charismatic personality is that people feel comfortable opening up to you quickly. Conversations with you seem to bypass surface-level small talk and move into something more meaningful. This is not accidental. It reflects a deep psychological mechanism known as emotional safety. When someone senses that they are not being judged, their brain reduces defensive responses, particularly in the amygdala, allowing for more open and authentic communication. You may not even notice that you are doing anything special, but your presence alone creates a space where others feel seen and understood. This ability often comes from subtle behaviors. You listen fully, without interrupting or mentally preparing your next response. Your eye contact feels natural, not forced. Your reactions show that you are genuinely engaged, not just waiting for your turn to speak. Neuroscience research suggests that these behaviors activate mirror neurons in others, creating a sense of connection and mutual understanding. In simple terms, people feel like you get them. And in a world where many feel unheard, this becomes incredibly powerful. Another sign is that your energy feels calm rather than overwhelming. Contrary to popular belief, charisma is not always high-energy enthusiasm. In fact, studies on leadership presence show that individuals who maintain a composed and grounded demeanor are often perceived as more influential than those who are overly animated. Your calmness signals confidence. It tells others that you are secure enough not to seek constant validation. This creates a stabilizing effect in social interactions, making people feel at ease. What makes this particularly interesting is that natural charisma often operates below conscious awareness. You are not trying to impress. You are not calculating your words. You are simply being present. And that presence, that quiet confidence combined with genuine attention, becomes the foundation of your magnetic appeal. If you recognize yourself in this, you might have spent years underestimating it. Because it does not feel like a skill. It feels like who you are. But that is exactly what makes it so powerful. Charisma, at its core, is not about performance. It is about authenticity expressed in a way that resonates deeply with others. Another powerful sign that you possess a naturally charismatic personality is the way people remember you long after the interaction ends. You might think a conversation was ordinary, nothing particularly special, yet days or even weeks later, someone recalls what you said, how you made them feel, or simply the presence you carried. This is not coincidence. It is the psychological imprint of emotional resonance. Human memory is not designed to retain information equally. According to cognitive psychology, emotionally charged experiences are encoded more deeply in the brain, particularly through the interaction between the hippocampus and the amygdala. When someone feels understood, valued, or inspired during an interaction, their brain marks that moment as significant. If people consistently remember you, it means your presence is creating emotional significance, even in subtle ways. This often happens because you are not just communicating words. You are communicating meaning. Your tone, your timing, your ability to pause and let silence breathe, all contribute to a sense of authenticity. Research in social neuroscience shows that people are highly sensitive to microexpressions and vocal nuances. Even when they cannot consciously identify why they feel drawn to someone, their brain is constantly processing signals of sincerity or insincerity. If you naturally align your words with your emotions, people perceive you as real, and that perception builds trust. There is also something else at play. Naturally charismatic individuals tend to make others feel important without appearing to try. You might ask thoughtful questions, remember small details, or respond in ways that show genuine curiosity. This activates what psychologists refer to as the need for significance, a fundamental human motivation. When that need is met, even briefly, it leaves a lasting impression. Another sign is that conversations with you often feel effortless. Time seems to pass quickly. There is a natural rhythm, a flow that does not feel forced. This aligns with the concept of interactional synchrony, where two people unconsciously mirror each other's body language, speech patterns, and emotional tone. Studies have shown that when this synchrony occurs, both individuals report higher levels of connection and satisfaction in the interaction. If you frequently find yourself in conversations that just seem to work, it is likely because you intuitively adapt to others in a way that feels smooth and natural. Interestingly, this does not mean you are always agreeable. In fact, another layer of charisma lies in your ability to express your thoughts honestly without creating tension. You can disagree, but in a way that feels respectful rather than confrontational. This balance between authenticity and empathy is rare. Many people either suppress their opinions to avoid conflict, or express them in ways that feel aggressive. If you can hold your ground while maintaining connection, people perceive you as both strong and approachable. There is also a subtle confidence in how you carry yourself. Not the loud, attention-seeking kind, but a quiet assurance that does not need validation. Psychologists often refer to this as self-concept clarity, the degree to which someone has a stable and clearly defined sense of self. When you know who you are, your behavior becomes more consistent, and that consistency makes others feel safe. They know what to expect from you, and that predictability builds trust over time. What makes all of this so fascinating is that you may not have consciously developed any of these traits. They may have formed through your experiences, your environment, or simply your natural disposition. Yet together, they create something powerful. A presence that people not only notice, but remember. And often, the most charismatic people are the least aware of their own impact. Because to them, it just feels normal. There is another sign of natural charisma that often goes unnoticed, yet it quietly shapes how people perceive you. It is your ability to influence others without force. You do not need to dominate conversations, raise your voice, or assert authority to be heard. When you speak, people listen. Not because they have to, but because they want to. This kind of influence is deeply rooted in psychological trust and perceived authenticity. Studies in social psychology, particularly those exploring persuasion, show that people are far more likely to be influenced by individuals they perceive as genuine rather than those who rely on pressure or manipulation. This aligns with what researchers call the authenticity bias, where people instinctively trust those whose behavior appears internally consistent. If your words, tone, and body language align naturally, others interpret this as honesty. And honesty in social dynamics is one of the strongest forms of influence. What is interesting is that this influence often operates subtly. You might share an idea, and later notice that others adopt it as their own. You might express a perspective, and suddenly the tone of the conversation shifts. This is not because you are trying to lead, but because your presence carries a kind of quiet authority. Psychologists refer to this as referent power, a form of influence that comes from being respected and liked rather than from holding a formal position of power. Another important sign is your emotional awareness. You have an intuitive sense of how others are feeling, even when they do not explicitly express it. This is closely related to emotional intelligence, particularly the ability to read social cues and respond appropriately. Research by psychologists like Daniel Goleman has shown that individuals with high emotional intelligence are consistently rated as more charismatic and effective in social interactions. You might notice subtle shifts in someone's tone, their posture, or even their silence. And instead of ignoring these signals, you adjust. You slow down when someone seems overwhelmed. You bring lightness when the atmosphere feels heavy. You give space when someone needs it. These small adjustments create a sense of attunement, where others feel deeply understood without needing to explain themselves. And that feeling is incredibly rare. At the same time, you do not lose yourself in others. This is what separates natural charisma from people-pleasing. You remain grounded in your own perspective while still being responsive to those around you. This balance creates a dynamic where people feel both supported and inspired. They do not just feel comfortable around you, they feel better about themselves after interacting with you. There is also a certain unpredictability in your presence, but not in a chaotic way. Rather, it comes from your ability to be fully present in the moment. You are not rigidly following a script in your head. You respond naturally, sometimes with humor, sometimes with insight, sometimes with silence. This spontaneity keeps interactions engaging because people cannot fully predict what you will say next, yet they trust that whatever it is will feel real. Neuroscience offers an interesting explanation for this. When interactions are slightly unpredictable but still safe, the brain releases dopamine, the neurotransmitter associated with curiosity and reward. This means that being around you can literally feel stimulating in a positive way. People become more engaged, more attentive, and more emotionally connected. All of this builds towards something deeper. Your presence does not just attract attention. It shapes how people experience themselves. And when someone feels more confident, more understood, or more alive after being around you, they naturally want to return to that experience. That is the quiet power of natural charisma. It is not about being the center of attention. It is about becoming the center of connection. The final sign of a naturally charismatic personality is perhaps the most powerful, and also the most difficult to see in yourself. People feel different after interacting with you. Not just entertained or impressed, but subtly changed. They leave the conversation feeling lighter, more confident, more understood, or even more motivated to act. And often, they cannot fully explain why. This effect is deeply rooted in what psychologists describe as emotional contagion, the process through which emotions are transferred from one person to another. Studies have shown that humans unconsciously mimic the emotional states of those around them, especially when there is a sense of connection. If your default emotional tone is grounded, open, and positive without being artificial, others begin to mirror that state. Over time, this creates a consistent pattern where being around you feels energizing rather than draining. But there is a deeper layer beyond emotional contagion. Naturally charismatic individuals tend to reflect back to others a version of themselves that feels expanded. When someone speaks to you, you are not just hearing their words. You are responding in a way that highlights their strengths, their ideas, or their potential. This aligns with what Carl Rogers, a pioneer in humanistic psychology, described as unconditional positive regard. When people feel accepted without judgment, they begin to access parts of themselves that are usually hidden behind self-doubt or fear. This does not mean you constantly praise or flatter others. In fact, forced positivity often has the opposite effect. What makes your impact different is that it feels real. When you acknowledge something in someone, it comes from genuine observation, not from a desire to be liked. And because of that, people trust it. They internalize it. Over time, this can shape how they see themselves. There is also a resilience in your presence. You do not crumble under social pressure, nor do you shift your identity to fit every situation. This stability creates what psychologists call a secure base in social interactions. When people sense that you are not easily shaken, they feel more comfortable expressing themselves freely. In a world where many interactions are driven by impression management and subtle competition, this kind of grounded presence stands out. Interestingly, research on long-term social influence suggests that people are not most impacted by those who impress them once, but by those who consistently make them feel safe and valued. This is where natural charisma becomes something more than a momentary trait. It becomes a lasting influence. People seek your presence not for entertainment, but for how it makes them feel about themselves. And here is the paradox. The more you focus on trying to be charismatic, the less effective it becomes. Because true charisma is not something you project outward. It is something that emerges when you are fully engaged, fully present, and genuinely connected to the person in front of you. It is not about controlling how others see you. It is about being real enough that others feel free to be real too. If you recognize these signs in yourself, even partially, it means you already possess something incredibly rare. Not a skill that needs to be manufactured, but a quality that can be refined. Because the most impactful people in the world are not those who speak the loudest or stand the tallest. They are the ones who create space for others to feel seen, heard, and valued.